A blind beggar sat beside the road every single day. Dust covered his clothes. His cloak was torn and dirty. People passed him constantly, but hardly anyone looked him in the eyes. To most people, he was invisible. Some tossed him a coin. Others ignored him completely. And over time, the beggar had grown used to darkness. Not only the darkness in his eyes, but the darkness in his heart. Because disappointment can blind the soul just as much as blindness blinds the eyes. Then one day, everything changed. The beggar suddenly heard shouting in the streets. A crowd was moving quickly through the city. "What is happening?" he asked. Someone answered carelessly, "Jesus of Nazareth is passing by." The moment he heard that name, something exploded inside him. Hope. Wild, desperate hope. And so the blind man began screaming at the top of his lungs, "Jesus, Son of David, have pity on me." The crowd became irritated immediately. "Be quiet. Stop shouting. You are embarrassing yourself." But the beggar shouted even louder, because this was his moment. And deep down, he knew that if he stayed silent now, he might remain blind forever. Then, suddenly, the crowd became quiet. Footsteps stopped, and a voice said, "Call him." The beggar froze. Jesus had stopped for him, not for the rich, not for powerful men, not for religious leaders. For him. People who had just silenced him now suddenly changed their tone. "Take courage," they said. "Get up, he is calling you." And then the gospel says something astonishing. The blind man threw aside his cloak and ran toward Jesus. That cloak was probably the only thing he owned. His security, his protection, his identity as a beggar. But he threw it away without hesitation. Because when Jesus calls you, sometimes you must leave behind the things you once depended on. Then came the question. Jesus asked him, "What do you want me to do for you?" The blind man could have asked for money, food, comfort. Instead, he answered, "Master, I want to see." Not just physically, spiritually, completely. And Jesus replied, "Your faith has saved you." Instantly, light flooded into the darkness. For the first time in years, the man saw the sky, the crowd, the face of Jesus. But the greatest miracle was not that his eyes opened. It was what happened next. The gospel says he followed Jesus on the way. Because once someone truly sees Christ, they can never walk the same road again. And maybe that is the real blindness Jesus came to heal. Not only blind eyes, but blind hearts. Hearts blinded by pride, fear, sin, hopelessness. The world will often tell you to stay silent, to stop calling out to God, to hide your weakness. But Bartimaeus teaches us something powerful. Never stop crying out for Jesus, even when the crowd mocks you, even when life feels dark, even when hope seems impossible. Because sometimes, the moment you think God is passing by is the very moment he stops and calls your name.